Please make sure to read along with me as I read Chapter 3. Chapter 3 Testing. Once the steamships docked in New York City, the immigrants in steerage were put on ferries for Ellis Island, a mile away. Usually groups of 1,000 arrived on the island at one time. It was scary and confusing for the immigrants. They struggled off the boat under the load of their heavy bags and trunks. Officials in uniform shouted orders that most of the new arrivals couldn't understand. They were herded toward a huge red brick structure, the main building. "I never saw such a big building, the size of it," said an immigrant from Russia. "According to the houses I left in my town, this was like a whole city in one building." Inside, the immigrants had to walk up a large, steep stairway. At the top were doctors with pieces of blue chalk. They were looking to see if the immigrants seemed healthy. Did they limp? Were they coughing? Were their eyes red? What about skin sores? If there was a problem, the doctor put a chalk letter on the person's back. H stood for heart, E stood for eyes, and so on. Chalk marks meant trouble. Marked immigrants were pulled aside and led away for further tests. Children with the marks were taken from their families. One immigrant recalled the heartbreaking scene of a sick child taken from its mother. The mother was holding the child and singing. All of a sudden, a doctor and two nurses took the child away. The mother couldn't speak English, and they're talking to her in English. They were saying that the child had to go to the hospital. Immigrants without chalk marks waited in line for a quick medical checkup. By far the worst part was the button hook test, the name for the eye exam. A button hook was a small curved tool used for buttoning women's shoes, but doctors in Ellis Island used it for turning eyelids inside out. They were checking for trachoma, a terrible eye disease that could lead to blindness. Trachoma spread quickly and easily, so it became one of the most likely medical reasons for sending immigrants home. Following the medical check, immigrants entered the Great Hall to wait for their next test. This giant room looked like a maze of rows separated by iron rails. The noise inside was deafening as a mix of languages bounced off the high ceiling overhead. For those in line, the noise wasn't as bad as their fear of the test ahead, a legal interview. They knew that wrong answers could get them deported, sent back. Immigrants went to stand before inspectors seated at high desks. Spread out on the desk were huge pages from ship's manifests. Inspectors fired off a list of questions. Where did you last live? Are you married? Do you have children? What is your occupation? Do you have family in America? Interpreters stood nearby to help. Ellis Island had interpreters for many languages. They translated back and forth from the inspector to the immigrant. It was a deep relief for immigrants to have someone understand what they were saying. Interpreters could explain confusing questions too. When the question, "What is your name?" had no simple answer, foreign names were long and unfamiliar to inspectors. They sometimes made mistakes in spelling them. As a result, some immigrants arrived from home with one name and left Ellis Island with another. A few inspectors may have shortened names on purpose. The name Finkelstein might be changed to Finkel or Stein. Goldenstein Weiss became Gold or Weiss. Some immigrants changed their names to make them more American. Another question was very tricky. Do you have a job waiting for you in America? A yes would prove that immigrants could make a living and not end up on public aid. But the right answer was no. By law, American business could not bring over immigrants to work in their factories or mines. Why? For years, crooked companies had taken advantage of immigrants, paying their way to America. Then immigrants ended up trapped in hard, low-paying jobs for years. How much money did you bring? Immigrants had to arrive at Ellis Island with $20 or $25, depending on the year. Penniless immigrants were more likely to be a burden on society. Can you read? This question was not asked until 1917. That year, a new law was passed to keep out illiterate immigrants. Illiterate means unable to read or write. Now immigrants had to read 40 words of text in English or some other language. Some found ways around the new law. One boy coached his illiterate mother to open the book the inspector gave her and recite the Lord's Prayer. Hearing the mother reading smoothly, and the inspector passed her. Help in passing the test sometimes even came from the interpreters. A number of them had come through Ellis Island themselves. One interpreter named Edward Farrow wrote that some of the soft-hearted interpreters hated to see people being deported. They sometimes reworded the immigrants' answers in a way to benefit the person and not the government. When the interview ended, the tests were finally over. At least they were for approximately 8 out of 10 immigrants. Those who passed were free to leave. On average, their stay at Ellis Island lasted 3 to 5 hours, but those who failed were detained. Who knew for how long? They could be stuck on the island for days, weeks, even months. Mail order brides. During the legal interview, immigrants were asked who paid for their fare to the United States. Thousands of women, called mail order brides, had an unusual answer. Their tickets were paid for by future husbands, men they had never seen. Mail order brides were so called because they became engaged by mail to men living in the United States who were from some native country. To find a bride, the men placed ads in their homeland newspapers. A woman responded by sending a letter about herself along with a picture. It was a risky way for young women to get to America, but thousands wanted to leave their homelands badly enough to take the chance.